Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. I'm Kyler Cheatham, your host for Confluential Live. I'm joined by Adam Cheatham, our CEO here at the Confluential. So, our firm specializes in technology strategy, modernization, and technical implementation when it comes to developing the modern technology strategy. This conversation we try and host weekly. Sometimes we don't get to it. But what we're seeing in the marketplace and kind of bring it to our platform to be able to have more conversations on how we can be successful in this kind of ever evolving technology strategy world that we're living in. So for today, we're talking about specifically AI projects and more on the high level of why AI leads to a lot of leadership failures when building out a technical strategy. So, before we kind of get into that, I know a few of you have joined us before. If you're new here, welcome. But the cool part about this conversation is the engagement from our audience in the comments, because a lot of times you guys have amazing insight to share as well. So, I encourage you to drop your questions or thoughts in the comments wherever you're joining us from today. It aggregates here all on our screen so we can see them, bring them up. So we would definitely appreciate that. If you want to test out that feature and drop where you're joining us from today, we always love to know kind of where you're at geographically. So with that, I'll let Adam introduce himself and kind of maybe give us an idea of what we're seeing in the marketplace, specifically around this 95% of AI project fails stat, Adam.
Yeah. So, first and foremost, welcome everybody. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you're joining us from. Um, my name's Adam Cheatham. I'm the CEO of Confluential, and I like to focus on the business purpose behind technical transformations and strategies. Right. So the thought process here is that technology is an enabler of the functions and objectives of the business, and that's its purpose, right? Some businesses sell technology, right, and they're that becomes a productized thing of it. But for most organizations, it's about technology providing a service as a tool. And when I think about AI, it's not different in that AI needs to provide a service. It needs to be a tool for folks in your organization to be able to use effectively. And that's its purpose. When we say things like 95% of AI projects fail, that the measuring stick is the purpose, right? The
Mhm.
goal. If you don't have something to measure against, you can't possibly claim victory if you don't have a place to plant the flag, right? So when we think about this high failure rate, what we see a lot in this is that people just go and do something, expecting something to happen, and most certainly something is going to happen. It just depends on whether or not that something is going to be positive or negative, and
Mhm.
then we'll talk a lot about those things here today, especially when we start thinking about the flip side of this, right? So 95% of AI projects fail. That means that 5% of them succeed. There's some positivity in that, right? There's some success out there. What does that look like? Where does that come from? And so we'll talk a bit about that today too.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we jump into that, let's talk about that 95% stat, right? Because it's important that we understand that these are from industry analysts that not only sell AI, but also sell AI consultancy services. So it's actually in their benefit, right? Right, that they do fail. But let's talk about where these stats come from so we can kind of break them down and then really dig into tactically what does that look like. So we've got stats on AI failure rates. We've got 85% of AI project fails, and that's according to Gartner and Forbes. And usually that's all built around data
Well,
quality.
the 95% comes from MIT.
Yes, I was
MIT said
about to thank
95,
you. Thank you for stealing my thunder there.
right? So
Yes,
like these aren't people who have zero credibility in the technical
exactly.
space.
Exactly. So
MIT
AIP
were the
are
smartest people on the planet.
yeah, and Sloan, which is obviously their business school there, did a survey on this, and it's important to understand what failure means and just the lack of data in the marketplace. So, little bit of skewing results, but definitely an opportunity. I will say MIT is very hard on their executive leadership certs and selling AI certs. So there still is some ulterior motives in that. But we still see an 80% failure rate, and that is from Rand and Harvard Business Review.
Yeah.
And when we look at that versus their data around traditional IT projects, we're seeing AI projects right in that 70 to 95, depending on who you ask, failure rate. Data quality issues a major factor, and poor adoption is a major factor. All of what we're going to talk about today. Traditional IT projects, we still see a high failure rate on those, but those are more 20 to 50%. And so much lower of a risk and a conversation there.
Yeah. Well,
So,
I think that in all of that, what strikes me in this is that if you undertake a traditional IT project, your your chance of success in getting things right is much higher. It's better than 50-50, right? So if you take a shot in the dark and you do 10 projects, you'll have 5 successes. In this, if you did 10 AI projects, you may have 10 failures,
mhm,
right? You might have 1 success in this or 2. And that's just simply to say that you would put that level of investment in something that is a less than 50-50 chance
mhm.
is not really what anybody in business wants to
No.
go after, right? Like, I guess you have some investments that are if I invest $1,000 in this, I have a 0.1% chance that it's going to turn into $1 million for me. Great, if I got $1,000 laying around, maybe that makes sense. But I doubt that that's the mindset that most of us have, which
Mhm.
I can afford to have a high failure rate because it's not just the idea that you're investing money in these AI projects. You are also therefore not investing in other things.
Yeah,
You have
absolutely.
it's money, it's resources, it's people, it's time, and all of those things are if most people who have gone down the AI path and AI projects right now are finding that if they had not focused on that, they would have achieved something.
Mhm.
And our conversation today, I think, is should center around the. That doesn't mean that AI is a bad idea.
Absolutely.
Kyler and I and the Confluential in general believe strongly in AI.
Yeah,
What we don't believe in is that it will blindly solve all of your problems by turning
exactly.
it on.
Yeah.
And that's really more of what we want to talk today, I think, about.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the point of going through those stats is understanding that there's a lot of kind of fear mongering in the marketplace right now, a lot of, all of these different pieces. And what we need to do is focus less on the stats, right? You can find different stats on all kinds of things and more on the problem. So let's talk about what
Yeah.
that problem is. I know there's kind of two different buckets that I'll kind of flood this conversation through, kind of that set it and forget it magic bullet mindset, and
Mhm.
then letting AI write the prescription for your organization. So can you speak to those two?
Well, I love that I'm going to take that second one
Yep,
first.
I knew you
And
were.
make sure I don't forget the first one because the second one is distracting to me. And we were actually talking about this morning that the folks who are asking AI what ails me, and then as they try to determine what is making them ill, they ask AI for a suggestion on okay, what should I take to get better, and then they get more sick. And then they go to the doctor and like, well, what did you take? It's like, well, AI told me to take this high dosage of this, that, and the other, so that's what I did. And they're like, right, no wonder you feel like you're being poisoned because you are being poisoned. And so the reason that that's important to us is that a high degree of the failure rate coming from this AI challenge is this assumption that AI knows the answer. It is all knowing, it is all seeing, and you can take what it tells you and run with it without question. And that's where most of as we study the actual trends in it, that's where the problems are coming from is folks that are leaning far too heavily on a magic bullet for AI being your solution. They're not asking what it is they're trying to solve. And so, from a perspective of how do I do this? How do I avoid this rate of failure? The answer is you start at the beginning and you don't rush into it. You have a tactical approach. Because if you read all those articles, their overall message in it on the root cause of this is that people aren't paying attention. They're not actually trying to figure out what it is they should get from AI. And so they're turning it on and they're finding that something is happening and they don't know what it is. And so you can't possibly declare victory if you don't have a set of targets to achieve. How can you say that I achieved my targets if there are none? So that's why this is becoming such a problem. Is that assumption that AI will fix it for me is a magic bullet, and that's part of the human condition, I think, to try to seek a magic bullet. Right? There are all complicated problems always have complicated answers.
Yes.
It's always going to be that way.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Anyway, so
I was going to say absolutely. Yeah. And I'll use a question to go back to, because it was unfair of me really to ask you two questions and
to lead me like that.
I know.
I
was just rage baiting you, just the title here, rage baiting all of you. That's all my job is over here. But no, so I think that piece in understanding what that actually means for your organization is really the critical understanding of like, what problem are you trying to solve? We see so many of these AI is our strategy for 2025. It's like, okay, well, what does that mean? And there's such ambiguity in the marketplace that it's very difficult to see. And I think that leads into this question. So my question was kind of break down the set it and forget it mindset. And Avery has a great question here on LinkedIn. Just a reminder to everyone joining, please pop your insight, your questions, your feedback in the comments, and we get to discuss as a group. But when people hear that 95% failure rate, it sounds almost unbelievable, which that's how it's supposed to sound, so that you'll, essentially buy their services. Can you unpack what failure really means? If tech isn't the main issues, where are leaders typically going wrong? So we've set it and forget it in there, if you can.
Yeah, and that's when you start thinking about technology. And this goes back to that purpose that technology must have a purpose for serving the needs of the business. It is a service to the business, just like your IT department serves the needs of the business. Unless your technology is your product, and then your IT department is probably still separate from the provision of your services, right? So, at the end of the day, this failure rate comes from starting at the beginning and rushing through it. I think that what's a big challenge in this that AI brings to the table that is a bit of a trap is it brings the allure of a quick and easy answer, right? That is like the value statement of AI. Ask ChatGPT whatever question you want. And what used to take hours of investigation takes seconds. Wow, right? So I was like, this is, I have now set my mind on Mach 3 level speeds, right? Now my mind is in speed mode. And so I'm rushing to get to this speed starting line. And so I am just plug in AI and let's do this. I'm in a hurry to do that. And we're not looking around us. We're not checking our surroundings, right? We're not asking, what is it that our business needs? We're jumping to conclusion, and that's like one of the most fatal errors in any technical scenario that leads to the highest rate of extraordinary spend with limited value is jumping to conclusions and solutioning without a problem statement. AI is our answer to everything right now. And because it's the answer to everything, is providing nothing because we aren't asking the questions. So if you go back and you read the MIT article and all those things, you'll find in there that they do say with that 5% success rate are the
Mhm.
organizations that did a couple of things. They sat down and asked, what are we doing this for? Why are we doing this? They're scrutinizing the spend on it in a healthy and appropriate manner. That is important to do, especially as a business, right? We shouldn't just throw money up into the air and hope that AI will catch it and then provide value coming down from that. AI will catch your money. It may not provide value.
Mhm.
So that piece of it, providing that level of scrutiny up front is so important
Mhm.
to preventing that jumping to solution habit so that we're asking that question.
Mhm.
The other part that I think is really intriguing, and I think that really aligns with what we do at the Confluential quite well, is that all of those successes have a high degree of being bite-sized projects.
Mhm.
You see what I did there?
Yeah,
You
very
like
well. Very
that?
well done.
At the end of the day, most of those organizations have not gone, we're going to plug AI into everything and
Mhm.
it's going to solve all of our problems. It's just you can't boil the ocean with this.
Yeah.
They've started with the tactic of saying, we have one problem. We're going to aggressively target that one problem. We are going to target that one problem with a specific AI solution, and
Mhm.
then we are going to take it one step at a time.
Mhm.
Controlling your pace in this, and that's what I
Mhm.
think is the hardest part of this, which I think is pouring a little bit of gas on the fire when it comes to AI, is that you have to be patient with it and getting it started. Look, when you stomp on the gas, great, maybe we're ready to rock, but we need to be ready at the starting line for this. And that's the piece of it that is controlling the pace of this deployment by making it
Mhm.
something that is consumable for your organization, and having those targeted pieces so that those smaller AI projects are the ones that start to yield value. And then what will end up happening is those organizations will then be able to take on the bigger things because they
Mhm.
will be able to understand the difference between speed and value.
Mhm.
And then when they understand the difference between the two, then they'll be able to tie them both
Mhm.
together. And,
Yeah.
and that's what comes next for that 5% or to whatever number you want to
Mhm.
say is a
Yeah.
success category. Those folks that have come out and said, I'm going to take my pace and I'm going to control it. And then I'm going to set my own markers and milestones for being able to adjust. Because at the end of the day, if you go off fast in one direction and you miss by 1 degree,
Mhm.
you get there, you get fast, and then you turn around and look an hour later that you went 500 miles an hour off by 1 degree. You're way off at this point.
Mhm.
But if you had gone slow enough, an hour later, you will see that, all right, we're a little bit off, we can correct, and those
Mhm.
types of things. That's really where this needs to go. And
Mhm.
I'm seeing a lot more of that type of success with AI than it's going to turn your entire world over and make everything effective.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like you had mentioned, I think on our last live, learning how to fail fast and fail forward, the risk is much lower on those types of pieces. Do you want to bring up a question? Do you think?
I'm laughing at Isabel Lane. KPIs,
Yeah, I
benefits
know.
realization. You're so
I know.
picky. Like, why would we want
I
these things?
know. I know.
We
Which
just
is,
want toys.
yeah, we just, want shiny new things to tell our board members about, for sure. And a lot of those types of understanding of what the job is of executives, right? It's to appease their board. So many times, a lot of this pressure on AI first is coming down from their shareholders that they need to deliver, that they have zero idea to deliver. Does that mean that they should just, fall on that sword and be like, hey, AI, everything, all the AIs? Absolutely not, right? That
Yeah.
means that they should be able to understand those expectations and the technology have those conversations.
Yeah.
But yeah, KPIs are absolutely critical in that.
Yeah.
And let's go to this question, which these are amazing questions. Just as a reminder, I will always go back in and answer all of these questions after the live too. to make sure that we're, getting back to them. But do you believe any of the failures occur due to the evolution of AI and its capabilities outpacing the training and development of teachers or other users? And I think the thing that I'll look at here is the stats on the workforce, right? We still have 40% and less of our workforce that knows anything about AI. So we've got these capabilities moving, and then the leadership's job is to upskill their communities in order to meet the capabilities of the new systems. So speak a little to that, Adam, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I think this is a fantastic question, and I'm certain that the speed of AI evolution has an impact on this. And I think that for me, that impact is in the availability of functions. Right,
Mhm,
when we started this thing, it could only do this one thing. And now look at all of the other additional new things it can do. And then we become distracted and then we try to go and do more things. And that doesn't mean that the one thing that we set out to do provides any less value. It just means that there are now opportunities for the next part of it, right? So this is where those folks who are having success in taking things one step at a time have an advantage in saying, all right, now I've gone 1, 2, 3 steps forward and I can survey the land and I now have a plethora of
mhm,
additional toys to play with, right?
mhm,
And now I can pick which one or two of those I'm going to play with, and I can
mhm,
move forward, knowing that this will continue to accelerate and my options will continue to develop. And maybe in that logic, there's a well, if we get started on AI right now, by some point, AI will solve the problem that it made for
mhm.
us. And it's like, but do you really want to count on that at the end of the
Yeah,
day? Would be my question. In this scenario, this question, I would say absolutely,
yeah.
and I would say this is exactly why you should be taking things very clearly one step at a time and in the smaller pieces of it. Uh,
Mhm,
I love that AI has, for example, the ability to sync up with an agile methodology,
mhm,
minimum viable product, because what's going to add value after that minimum viable product comes together is going to be totally different. So let's run a 2 week sprint. Let's run a 2 week go live. We'll be live on something new in a month. We'll have something bite sized. It'll start adding value, and now we can look at the new toys and tools available to us, as opposed
mhm.
to spending a month defining requirements for all this massive thing that an
Yeah.
AI is going to do, and then start building it based on the fact that there are 10 more things available today for
Mhm,
solutioning that we didn't even think of when we're writing requirements.
mhm,
Now we're writing requirements and solutioning at the same time. And our solution base is growing. And what ends up happening is once we get into testing, well, now there's something else new.
mhm,
And somebody says, well, that's a piece of it. That's a requirement now.
mhm,
That requirement we go, and now we're in the middle of testing. We're writing requirements and deving new things that we've never done anything with before, and
mhm.
we're by the time we're going live, we've got like 5 different things going on. None
Yeah.
of which are minutely tied and structurally composed around our original scope. We're 6 months into this. We've
Yeah.
set an expectation that now we are providing this massive amount of value because we've taken a long time to get to this point. You better provide value at this point, and we don't have any ability to do it because we have no idea which problems we're solving with what tools. It gets turns into a rat's nest really, really fast. And
Mhm,
what actually was coming to my mind in this from a pace perspective, and I don't know how many folks out there are fly fishermen in this, but I'm gonna go live in another world for just a moment. Um, if you are carefully surveying your surroundings in fly fishing and you are casting carefully at a pace that fits for the conditions around you, the wind and all of those things, you'll have a very nice cast. It will land just perfectly and will be good to go. If you're rushing it, if your timing is off, you're thinking about too many things and you're not focused on the one outcome and putting a fly in one specific spot, you're gonna cast too early. You're going to create a whole snarled up mess in your
Mhm.
life. You know what you're going to do? You're going to sit on the bank for 5 minutes, cursing at yourself, trying to untangle the mess that you made before you decide, forget it. I'm going to cut my line and I'm going to start over. And
Mhm.
that's a fantastic analogy for where
Mhm.
people are at in this, where they lose focus, they lose their ability to just remain in step with what it is they're trying to accomplish. They make a mess out of things, and then when they sit down to try to figure out why they made this mess and um, unmess it up, we'll stay out of the words that popped in my head. Um, to fix this mess, and then you just say it's too big a mess. I'm going to start over,
Mhm.
and you've done nothing but sit for the last 15 minutes or
Yeah.
6 months, however long it took you to screw up your project, and gotten nothing from it.
Mhm.
And the fish is gone, also. So
Laughing at you. Yeah.
um, that's it's such a great analogy for
Mhm.
it, on the whole, because as these things start to come together, you also have the training and development. Uh,
Mhm.
I don't know if it's if it's intentional that we said teachers instead of
Yeah.
users. There's also a bit of this, which is like our son is like, "Can I talk to Google?" He's
Mhm.
like having conversations with Gemini, and I'm and teachers don't know how to handle this as
Mhm.
kids are using Chat GPT to write their essays and things like that. Trainers don't know what to do with this
Yeah.
because they can't possibly know what to do with it,
Yeah.
because
Not
at the
with
end of
it.
the day, somebody says, "I need you to write a training script for this new tool," and they're like, "Okay, what does it do?" And all at once they give them an answer, which is, "It does everything, but it doesn't
Yeah.
really do anything."
Yeah.
And they're like, "What are you talking about?" So,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a very similar thought process to executives, and I think baseline tactically, because we always wanna give you guys something to take away from this conversation, is plan for talent investment. Understand what you're gonna need, even if you are doing that bite-sized, more agile autopilot versus co-pilot, right? Co-pilot, approach
uh,
where you're trying it in one organization, you need to be vigilant and taking, notes and analysis around what talents you're going to need, because it totally depends on the
mhm.
system, depends on the apartment, and you just need to be ready for that type of investment. So when you're thinking about kind of this rush to AI, especially if you're getting that pressure from your executives, right? We have to do this to stay competitive. We have to do this to appease our customers, to appease our shareholders, whatever. You have to remember that that talent development takes time, and it's going to be your job as the project leader or the
Yeah.
PM to explain that to the executive in a way that they're able to understand. Remember when we trained on, our S4 HANA system? Yeah, it's going to be the same exact timeline for that type of training and adaption understanding. So I think that
Okay.
gets into this question from LinkedIn. So, most organizations have a 5 year, 10-year strategy plan, right? Can you talk about how evaluating AI can increase ROI of those identified issues and how they can move the organization forward on both the strategic and shiny fronts? And the reason I like this question is because we're not trying to swim upstream, right? AI is not going away. We're not going to
Yeah.
convince our executives that they're never going to use AI or all of those different things. So we have to understand how we kind of Jedi mind trick them into being like, yes, we're using AI, but in a way that the organization can actually be capable of consuming.
Yeah, and this is, um, if we're gonna evaluate how AI can provide a return on investment, especially as we are identifying issues within our strategic 5-year plan. The overall goal here, that there's so many things wrapped up in that give us an answer in it, right? What are our issues? We've identified them. Yes,
Mhm.
I'm making an assumption that we have. We've identified the issues and we've done that effectively. Perfect. And we have a plan for solving those issues. And if we have done this really effectively, that plan in solving those issues has an answer for where the value is going to come from, right?
Mhm.
If I solve this problem, I will therefore be able to provide this type of an ROI in a manner which fits with our strategic goals. Yeah. Um, that core has nothing to do with the actual technical solution in that. Uh,
Mhm.
we have a plan, a strategy, and a set of objectives. Now, when we start thinking about moving our organization forward, we get to pick a solution and then we get to evaluate it against its ability to solve for those objectives. And I'll be the first to admit that in solving for those objectives, it's not a bad thing to say, I have this answer. It will provide an answer. It will solve these objectives.
Mhm.
But man, it's just, which would you rather do? That and gain those objectives, or beat your head against a wall? And they might be the same thing, right? Um, but this answer will provide the same benefits on the same timeline, and it's fun and fulfilling
Mhm.
to the people that are using it. So that shiny piece of it isn't a bad thing. It's shiny and distracting that's a bad thing, right?
Mhm.
So start talking about how your people are going to help you accomplish these goals in this 5-year plan. Think about how they're going to gain fulfillment from that. And we talk a lot about the fulfillment of the organization at the Confluential and how it is that
Mhm.
impacts the effectiveness of things. There's no doubt in anybody's mind that a happy employee is more productive than an angry. Well, angry employees, they might actually, if they can focus on that, that actually might work out quite well, unless they're angry at you.
Yeah,
Uh,
right.
but a disgruntled employee, we'll say, is
Mhm.
going to provide far less benefit to the organization because their heart's not in it. And
Mhm.
if we do things in a fun and exciting way, and then we do also have our feet set on
Mhm.
knowing how we're going to solve these problems, that's how I would think about this idea of um, how can AI help us increase the ROI
Yeah.
of these issues that we've come in, so that we aren't just assuming that we're going to purchase an AI tool and it's going to
Yeah.
solve all of our problems.
Yeah.
Uh, we also need to be aware of how we're finding ceilings in what
Mhm.
AI is good for and what it's not, right? AI does a lot of content generation quite well. It does a lot of analysis quite well.
Mhm.
Um, creative pursuits and creative solutions, not so much. And maybe it will solve that, but it would behoove us to say, um, asking AI to generate a map of Europe and have all of the correct country names and current borders, and assuming that it will have the correct country names and current borders in the same spots, is like there's a high rate of failure in that.
Mhm.
So let's figure
Mhm.
this out from a perspective of being targeted.
Yeah. And I think that's the real point of a question like this is, first of all, how do you define ROI? And that's a lot of times why we see these big mass failures, right? Because there was no defined goals at the beginning of the the overall practice. Where are you utilizing the AI? Is it in supply chain? Are you doing quality assurance? Are you, finding defects faster? Are you using predictive maintenance and, having less downtime in your machines? Those are all areas in which needs to be defined and communicated before you can move forward strategically. If they don't understand that, then they're not going to be involved and engaged. Similar to the training question, is it's really actually not that complicated. People
Mhm.
do not like to be blindsided, right? So as much as you want to keep this under the vest to not involve disruption, you need to understand that you need to engage your organization, because that's going to be the strategic piece. The AI is the shiny piece. And the funny part about this question is just the irony upon the shiny AI, right? We usually see AI used for very boring things, right? Very manual processes within manufacturing or production that typically are not the, funnest job to have. And that's the point of AI. Can it be used for front end things? Of course. But can it also be used very well for things like I just mentioned, quality assurance? Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that piece in defining the AI and where it's going to work is so critical.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, we have a response to this too that I think is worth.
oh, sorry, I broke Restream, the technology executive who can't work technology. It's fine. Is this
Yes.
Hunter's here?
Yes, that one. So there are a couple of things in this that I think are important. I'm going to pick and choose a couple of comments in it as opposed to reading the whole thing. But there's a there's a point in here talking about becoming AI literate
Mhm.
and the be fast, don't hurry approach. I love this. I'll go back to Huberman again and
Oh,
as fast as we carefully can. Right.
yes.
That's what we're talking about here. Going as fast as we carefully can. And when we start thinking about AI, the thought process applies the same, right?
Mhm,
We want to go fast in things. It's the idea that we could miss a moment from
mhm,
a perspective of having FOMO and AI. Rushing through this is still problematic.
mhm,
Yes, does every business really need AI? Probably not, but every business can benefit from it, I think is the easiest way of talking about
mhm,
it. As we think about going as fast as we carefully can
mhm.
and enabling our employees in this process, and it's the same as being able to drive a car fast, right?
Yeah,
Knowing where we're going, what we're doing, setting the stage, and knowing, am I on a straight highway or am
exactly.
I on a winding backcountry road? Bringing those things to the forefront of the conversation and becoming AI literate. What are we trying to do with this? What is possible and what is not? Starts to set the stage for what becomes realistic. If we're going a straight line, we can go as fast as we want. If we're going winding road, we need to be much more tactical when
Mhm,
we hit the gas and when we hit the brakes and all of those things. So, which one of those scenarios are we in from an AI literacy perspective, and how do we bring people along in that process?
mhm,
Um, that's how you empower people to then use it effectively,
mhm,
so that there isn't a pressure of saying you must do this that leads to large scale failure. And maybe the answer is you must do this. Maybe there is an imperative in that, but bringing people along and teaching them what it means to do that, and instead of just saying you figure it out, somebody's not going to be able to figure it out. How many people aren't able to figure it out, especially the way you mean it, is up to you, because that's about you teaching them what you mean carefully enough up front so that we can go fast.
mhm.
I love this comment from Hunter Hickman. I'm down with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And something to kind of look at in this conversation with Hunter's great advice, and that's the point of these lives, right? To jump in with your expertise. Ours isn't always, AI training and AI literacy. We are more on the technical implementation and just overall business side of it. But when it comes to understanding the talent, one I really like to look at is Queen Mary University in London. They actually have a whole multi-level AI literacy framework that's really interesting to read. It's one of the first of its kind in higher education. And so understanding what that actually looks like, and because AI literacy, it's like, okay, well, can they use ChatGPT or can they, code the back end of, all of these different like vibe coding systems.
Yeah.
So what does that mean on each level? And that has to be identified and understood. And that's again why we always recommend that pilot based approach, because it's easier to learn that in a very small group as opposed to enterprise wide, right? And
Bite-sized pieces, right? You can learn a
mhm,
little bit this week, and then you can learn a little bit more next week. And this big bang approach is just with AI, they don't match.
mhm,
No, which is fine. Take bites.
absolutely.
You
Yeah,
know, AI is an elephant. Eat one bite at a time.
absolutely. And so let's just back up here. And so, why do you think leadership specifically is to kind of blame here. Obviously, they're just decision makers. But
Yes, the CEO.
yeah, but
Why
what
is this your
what
fault?
is what is the issue with them? Like, it seems to be the main failure point, that they either don't understand themselves, or they're pushing strategies that don't make sense. I don't know if we've ever really seen a time in which they get so obsessed with technology, like it has been with AI, where they push strategies that are totally meaningless. So I want to know why that's an issue.
So I think a lot of it goes back to what I think is probably two things. One of them is the speed at which AI moves infers a need for speed in deployment of it. And that's when we get enchanted with this: do everything all at once as fast as possible. And that is, for me, a part of the challenge where there's a disconnect in leadership saying we're going to do this, we're going to do it as fast as possible, because AI has a charm, which is fast.
Hmm.
Fast, to the point of, we're not even talking breakneck speed. We're talking way faster than that, because we're taking hours and condensing them into seconds. So there's a piece of that that I think is contributing to that problem. Another piece of that I think is still a jumping to a, I have a solution, but I don't have a problem. And I think that has actually been around forever.
Hmm.
And I have seen many, many, many organizations come and say to me, "I need a new ERP." Like, okay, so what? Well, let's just say that we talk about all the problems that we have, and the ERP is supposed to solve. And you get into the weeds with it, and none of these are problems that have anything to do with the existing
Yeah.
technology.
Yeah.
You know,
It's a good
ERP
point.
is actually the wrong answer.
Yeah.
And I have told a lot of really shocked
Yeah.
clients, don't buy ERP. It
Yeah.
is not
Exactly.
going to solve your
Hmm.
problems. And then they say, we're going to do it anyway. And my answer then becomes, okay, if that's what you're going to do, I can help you do this well. But we need to solve these other problems along the way while we do that, or it will make more ERP
Yeah.
problems.
Yeah.
Right. So you talk about how ERP makes things happen faster. It only makes problems that you don't solve become problems faster. I think that habit has been around for a long time, and it isn't going away. But the speed to react is accelerating that problem with AI, and that's where I
Hmm.
think we're running into some issues there. I think that there's also a piece of this, on the whole, which gets back to um, why we're talking about making improvements in the first place, and how it is we are thinking about leading those improvements. Um, there's a part of this that it's easy to blame leadership, right?
Hmm.
Leadership screwed this up.
Always. Yeah.
They, like, I want to take that word leadership and I want to change our definition of it, right? Leadership includes your executive team, right?
Hmm.
That's, they're by default kind of
Hmm.
supposed to be
Hmm.
leadership. There's the definition of their part of their job description. But leadership doesn't happen only at the executive level.
Hmm. Hmm.
You can have people leading at many levels
Hmm.
of the organization, even the lowest levels
Hmm.
of the
Oh yeah.
organization. There are leaders, and those leaders can screw this up just as much as any other leader in your organization. Because what happens, and we talk about Jim. Uh, Jim, the guy that on the shop floor, has been doing this for decades. He already knows the answer before the question is asked. He's that good at it. He's that quick. It's taken him 30 years to develop that sixth
Hmm.
sense of where things are coming from. But he's a leader in your organization. People look to him for answers.
Hmm.
And if you don't think that his leadership matters in this as
Hmm.
well, then you are not thinking of leadership the right way. Because when Jim says that AI thing is the dumbest thing I've ever
Hmm.
heard, and we are not going to get it right because it's just not necessary, it's not needed, that's that leadership is part of where you can destroy your program.
Hmm.
So this is an organizational change intelligence opportunity in this as well. Jim is a great guy. I love Jim. You know, I've had a lot of beers with a lot of Jims. Okay, I love him. We get along great because there's just this sense of reality in that
Yeah.
he's a leader, and there
Yeah,
are people who,
absolutely. Yeah.
yep, and there are people who are going to take on leadership roles that you don't expect them to, and you may not even know they're taking on because they're trashing the project behind the
Mhm.
scenes as a negative leader. And that leadership is important too,
Yeah.
because they're leading small factions that grow. And then the executive leadership side of it could be bulletproof, but if it doesn't come down to the bottom level
Mhm.
in a way that's meaningful, it doesn't mean it doesn't
Mhm.
connect. And so
Mhm.
leadership becomes more disconnected uh, from the purpose. So.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think that leads to a question here. All right, we defined leadership at every level. We talked about what the problem is, right? So,
Mhm.
what separates specifically the leadership in these 5%, 10%, 15%, whatever, of successful AI projects? What is the difference between when you walk into a room and talk to a CIO and immediately know, which I know you know, in 2 minutes if this project is going to work or not work? What's the difference between CIO A that is successful and CIO B that's not successful?
So there are a couple pieces of in this question. One of them is that CIOB, who is going to bomb this, is listening to everybody else, and they are not providing a sense of leadership that is clear and has direction because they're more focused on what other people think and all of the voices that are whispering in his ear, this we should do it this way, we should do it that way. And so what he does is he tries to appease all of those directions all at once, and there's zero clarity in this. One of the things that clarity looks like is a CEO, a CIO, a CEO, a CFO. I actually work with a controller who's very good at this
Mhm.
right
Yes.
now, and it shows.
Mhm.
And it is look, I understand that some people are going to think that the way that I'm doing this is it's going to be unpopular for some people.
Mhm.
They're not going to like it. But what I am going to be able to tell you is that I'm not worried about appeasing them. I'm worried about being effective in this, and that mentality right there. It happens at the executive level, but it also happens at these multiple levels of leadership that are either in the back, behind the scenes, or in the front and center on stage. It's that I am less worried about all of the voices and opinions that can inject doubt and misdirection into my strategy, and I am dead set on taking a stand for a particular direction. Then that way, and then what I like about this from my personal leadership style is that then that way, if I'm wrong, I got nobody to blame but myself.
Mhm.
And that's another indicator. Like if people are pointing fingers for blame, as opposed to saying we didn't set the right direction in this, that's a different type of problem. But
Yes.
that's a piece of the leadership style that you can read right away. And sometimes if a C level person or a leader or director or whatever, VP, whatever level is listen, if you think they're listening to you and understanding what it is you're saying, and then they decide to do something else, that's okay. Be okay
Mhm.
with that. And then
Mhm.
listen to them and say, all right, you heard me, we're good.
Mhm.
And then it doesn't need to become about your feelings. It needs to become about the outcome.
Yeah.
That's such a difference in
Mhm.
those types of organizations. What happens after that is that leader who is taking things as they have a real good strong north star. They know where they're going.
Mhm.
Then they also have this not given a care about what other people think it should look like because they're in the driver's seat. It's like listening to our son tell me I should have driven it this way. Like, dude, you tell me how to drive, and we're gonna have a problem. That's anyway. We have those things. He's 6, so of course he
Yeah.
has opinions. Um, being able to sit down and say, "This is the direction that we're going. This is how we're going to get there. It's my job to be the captain of this
Mhm.
ship and to drive it. So I know where we're going. I know where I want to, how I want to get us there,
Mhm,
and then I can have all the strategy in my head, kind of helping bring people on board with it.
mhm.
That clarity of direction is really the difference because it
Uh-huh.
also allows us to control our pace and see we're moving too fast on this.
Yeah, for sure. I think that is a great way. And then I also think one thing I would add is just discipline and
Mhm.
follow through.
Yes.
Um, that is something that we see lacking all of the time, whether you're doing an AI project, an ERP project, an MES project, whatever project, is you secure this alignment and then you think it's a temporary, just one thing that you need to do. And it's not, it's a strategic alignment throughout the project. So even if you feel like you have executive buy in, that needs to be continued throughout the entire project. And we see a lot of, because we have the privilege of working in the metal space or heavy manufacturing space, these are companies with high levels of discipline in everything
Mhm.
that they do. And a lot of times that's where we see them slip, is not having the ability to say, okay, I'm the CIO, this is the project I've decided on, but my team is now going to follow through on actually producing that. A lot of times there's breakage in that area.
Yeah. Well,
Very good. Well, this has been an amazing conversation. We could go for hours in here for sure. Is there any other question on this list that you want to answer to round out, or do you feel like we're kind of in a good spot?
I like where we are. You know,
Okay.
I like the questions and the comments and the participation today. I think that at the end of the day, we nobody cares how much AI can do if it's
Hmm.
not actually sticking,
Yeah.
right? I've and I'll give you a great example of what it looks like to be um, thoughtful in this, because then it starts to grow, it starts to stick, and the ideas start to catch elsewhere. Applying AI to the enterprise is an incredibly difficult thing to do, and it takes a little bit at a time for people to
Hmm.
start thinking about how they can solve problems creatively with AI.
Hmm.
And I was sitting in workshops this week, and we have a client who is looking to integrate a couple of solutions where they want their contracts to be something that
Hmm.
specific information about their contracts shows up within their new system. It pulls
Hmm.
automatically. Because right now they enter things like expiration dates and things like that all manually. There's a high degree of error, and it's just causing problems for them.
Hmm.
And then somebody says from the side, like, well, what about our document AI system that we're using for something totally different?
Hmm.
No, it scans our documents for certain things. I bet it could scan for date terms and help us figure that out a bit more effectively. That's that's the type of opportunistic nature that you want to start creating in your organization, and it's a small bite-sized thing. We might be able to do it. We've got it listed as a possibility, and
Hmm.
we'll check into it. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but they've gone about things incredibly intentionally, and now they've got an opportunity for people to start thinking about it. And people
Hmm.
will think about it, they'll catch on at different rates, but the way it came up this week was a good application of
Yeah.
a maybe we are actually doing something that might also apply here,
Yeah.
might also apply here, as opposed to saying we're going to go full board, we're going to put it everywhere and see where it actually works. Is
Uh-huh.
a start with something, and then people will see it and then say, I bet I could do that with it too.
Yeah.
That's the interaction that starts to gain growth in
Hmm.
AI, and how it is organizations are really going to leverage this. Not that we're going to do it all at once.
Hmm.
We're going to do it one idea at a time.
Hmm. Yeah, and that speaks volumes to the culture of the organization, because on the flip side, they're also not saying, "Well, that tool is mine." I can't share that tool
Yeah,
across the organization, because, or else, somebody else is going to utilize it and steal it
yeah.
from me. That speaks volumes to the level of collaboration that we see here. But thank you, Adam, for all the amazing insight. This was a really good conversation. If you have follow up questions for us, we're always happy to answer them. You can reach us, Kyler at theconfluential.com or Adam at theconfluential.com. You can also DM us on LinkedIn. We're pretty active there. But thank you to the audience for all of these amazing questions. You always have my commitment to come back in here and answer your questions. We do try and go live every Friday, right around 10:30 Eastern time here in the States. So definitely, if you have feedback on our lives, we always love to hear from our audience, as you guys, make it just as great as we do in these conversations. So with that, we hope you all have a lovely weekend, long weekend here in the States if you're celebrating Labor Day. And then also, we will see you next week, hopefully on Bite Size as well on Tuesday, which is my podcast that you can find on LinkedIn. So with that, thank you to Adam. Thank you to the audience, and we'll see